So we got a lot to talk about today. We just came off of that huge Transformers trailer for Rise of the Beasts and all the hype from it, but we got even more information about next year's Transformers CG animated movie. We talked about it just a couple of days ago, and we got a little bit of information here and there, but now we got a name, we got a release date, we got a cast, we got actors. We know quite a bit now going into 2024 when this movie is going to be released in that summer of 2024. So this comes courtesy of CinemaCon that Paramount was present at, and they did a little panel and they revealed quite a bit about this movie. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down like we do here on the Transformer Slag podcast and make sense of everything. So first off, the title of this movie is Transformers 1. So this is emphasizing a beginning, an origin. It all starts here. It's like DC's year one. It's like, I don't know why they went with such a simple name, but I think they really want to emphasize on this is the beginning. This is where it all starts. Is it part of the movie continuity? Is it its own thing? We don't know, but we do know that this is where it begins for a Transformers story. A very Generation 1 Transformers story. So they say here that the plan is for July 19th, 2024. It looks like they already have a hard release date. And the producer of all the past live action movies and stuff, Lorenzo de Bonaventura, he did interviews. We talked about him already here on the podcast. He's already seen recordings of it and animations of it and everything. And now we have the cast. We have the cast now and the characters related to the cast. And it's no surprise that they're going for a very Hollywood cast. They're not going to go with professional voice actors. That's just the way it is with Hollywood. I know that one of them was trending quite a bit because a lot of fans were unhappy about it, but I'll get into that in a moment. But let's go through this cast. So Optimus Prime, our main character, the man, is going to be played by Christopher Hemsworth. If you don't know who it is, it's Thor. It's the Avengers. It's the popular leading man right now in Hollywood. And they want to go with him, because that's how these nepotistic kind of Hollywood movies are, especially with animated movies. There was a voice actor that I sat down with many years ago at TFCon. I don't want to name his name because I don't want to hurt his, potential, but an older voice actor. And he talked about in private about why this kind of stuff happens in Hollywood. And at the time he was addressing what was going on with Shrek and why they weren't hiring voice actors. They were hiring instead, actors. And he said that, for years during the Disney era, a lot of these animation producers and directors would film these big movies, but when they would go home to their wives or when they go home to their families, they wouldn't be able to brag about the voice actors that they got to work with, because it would just be voice actors. Once in a while you got a Robin Williams in Aladdin or something, but it was a different time. And then when it came into the era of Shrek and a lot of these other bigger CG movies that then started having actual actors instead of just voice actors, those directors now could go home to their wives and families and say, oh, I got to be with, this movie's, Hollywood celebrity or whatever. And that started to become more common as time progressed. A lot of those actors started talking to their other actor friends and saying, oh my God, it was so much easier to do this animated movie than it was to do this film. And a lot of times when these films make big money, they still make big money. Tom Hanks is famous for a lot of big movies in Hollywood, but I'm pretty sure Tom Hanks also went around to everybody and said, hey, being Woody in Toy Story was a lot easier and paid just as well and worked just as well for me. So there's kind of that thing that's been going on with Hollywood in a while. And the choice of Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Hammer, I want another. It's something where I could understand why that direction happened, and I'll get into a little more why they went with him over Peter Cullen. And that one was trending like crazy on Twitter and all the social medias, but I'll get into why probably after. Brian Thierry Henry, I'm unfamiliar with this actor. He's going to be playing Megatron. Now, from what I know him from, he was Jefferson Davis in Into the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Man animated movie. And I'm mentioning voice acting stuff. So, I mean, sure, we'll see. It's something where it's more show, don't tell. So let me see how he does, but we'll see what happens with him. He's the one who's going to be playing Megatron. Scarlett Johansson, another Avengers alumni, Black Widow this time, is going to be playing Alita 1. Again, it's Hollywood. They're going to be bringing people in. Let's go back to that Shrek thing. You got Michael Myers as Shrek, but you got to have the female flavor du jour at the time, which was Cameron Diaz, who played Fiona in Shrek. And it's kind of the same thing. Scarlett Johansson's big in Hollywood right now with the Marvel movies. They need a female character for the Transformers. They're going to get a big female Hollywood star at the moment, and that's going to be Scarlett Johansson. We have Keegan-Michael Key as Bumblebee. So, he's just coming off of right now the Super Mario movie as Toad, and he's also done a whole bunch of other Hollywood stuff and has found success with it. Of course, a lot of people know him for Key and Peele and all of that stuff if you're on the internet and enjoying comedy. So it's one of these things, hey, we got to get a comedy relief guy that might play Bumblebee. I'm a little reminded of Bumper Robinson when he played animated Bumblebee. I think they might be going in that route, but we'll see. We'll see. Again, this is supposed to be an origin story. These are when all the characters are younger, so I could kind of see that too, maybe playing that route. We got John Hamm playing Sentinel Prime, the leader before Optimus was leader. Again, best known from Mad Men, probably what everyone knows him for, his, guest appearances on 30 Rock and Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think also him being there is because he has a contract with Paramount. He just came off of Top Gun Maverick and stuff, and that did very well. So it's also one of those things when you have certain, production companies, they want to keep certain guys that they have within their production. So I think that's also how we kind of landed on that role. Sentinel Prime, how they going to play him? I'm thinking, young, brash, political leader. They could go the animated, arrogant route, or they could go the political, megalomaniac route of the comic books. We don't know, but we'll see. If it's John Hamm, and I'm kind of putting in my mind of the stuff that he's played in the past, I could see more of a slight lean to the animated part with a little bit of the political part. We'll see. We will see how that's played out. But again, Sentinel Prime. And Lawrence Fishburne as Alpha Trion. This is his Matrix role, playing Morpheus, and a mentor role all over again. Considering Alita and Optimus are here, and you have Alpha Trion, it's going to lead to, truly that rebuild and origin story of Orion Pax into Optimus Prime. Again, Lawrence Fishburne, the Matrix movies, I could go on and on. It's, there's certain guys you don't even need to say what they've done. You know who it is and everything that he's done. And so that's the cast pretty much. I just want to kind of reiterate, this was something that they were planning back in April of 2020. It was a reaction to what was going on with COVID and stuff. And they have a lot of plans with this. Again, it's going to be a all CG animated movie, all on planet Cybertron. ILM is going to be doing the animation, and they want to make this a trilogy, as Lorenzo said, but they're first going to just try to make a really good first movie to get a good foundation, and then they aim to do a trilogy and tell that story of a beginning, middle, and end. Again, an origin story of how Optimus Prime and Megatron became the people who they are today, due to the war, learning about Cybertron's culture and society. They mentioned that they also want to talk about the origin of Cybertron itself, which that should be really interesting, how they want to go about it. To quote Lorenzo here, he said, It's about these young men trying to find their way and how they question society and what's going on around them. So again, it's how Orion Pax and Megatron became who they are today. Could be like an Orion Pax doubting, Sentinel Prime's leadership and political, way of how the war is breaking out, and maybe playing up that, Orion Pax and Megatron were once friends, but then they went in their separate directions, where Megatron went one way and Orion went the other and later became Optimus Prime. So it's, they could play up that too. So let's get into the choices. And so, most of those actors, fine. It's Hollywood. I get why this happens. I mean, I'm not expecting like Marilyn Aragon, who played Alita 1 almost 40 years ago, to reprise the role at this point. I mean, this is supposed to be a young Alita 1 in the war, and Marilyn, I think she's in her 80s now, or in her late 70s. The guy who played like Alpha Trion, John Stephenson, he's no longer with us. He passed away many years ago. He was also Thundercracker, Huffer, Windcharger. I think he was DevCon also. And he was TV season 3 Cup also. He's no longer with us. Like a lot of the classic voice actors, you're not going to get them back because most of them are either not with us anymore or they're just retired. They're just not in the biz. And when we're talking like even Sentinel Prime, yeah, you could bring in Townsend Coleman, the voice of the Tick. He played animated Sentinel Prime. But again, they want to go Hollywood. They're going to look within their Paramount studios and go with those names that people know. That's just how it's going to be. The big one that everyone was talking to me about and private messaging me is they couldn't believe Peter Cullen is not going to be in this. And I get their perspective from a muscle memory standpoint. Okay, Peter Cullen has been Optimus Prime in all of these Michael Bay movies, Travis Knight movies, now the Creed director of Stephen Caple Jr. with Rise of the Beast. 7 movies, Optimus Prime, original 86 movie, Optimus Prime. It's always been Optimus Prime. Transformers Prime, the TV series, it was Peter Cullen. I get that. I totally do. But the one thing that two things I think people are really forgetting is, number one, this is an origin movie. So it's going to be a young Orion Pax becoming Optimus Prime. And Peter Cullen is 81 years old. I met Peter Cullen just recently. I've met him multiple times throughout the years. And, he's getting old. I love Peter to death. He's a fellow Montrealer born and raised here, but he's getting old. And, a Christopher Hemsworth voice, I think, would make a better Orion Pax into an Optimus Prime in the early days of the war than, let's say, a Peter Cullen. Maybe Peter could come back for the sequels when it's an older Optimus Prime, now weathered from the war. But I think for maybe a young a young Orion Pax, Optimus Prime, a Christopher Hemsworth works. And reminder, people, Peter Cullen was Optimus Prime in the original G1 cartoon, but he wasn't Orion Pax. Orion Pax, actually, when he was in the show, when they did that flashback and showed Orion Pax during the early days of the war, he was played by Laurie Faso. And Laurie Faso, back then in 1985 when they were recording it, was like 6-7 years younger than Peter Cullen. They used a younger guy with a younger voice to play Orion Pax, and Peter Cullen plays the battle-hardened, John Wayne Optimus Prime character. So I almost kind of understand why they went with a younger, different actor. I get people wanting the consistency and everything, but, and this is another thing too, is we've had Peter Cullen through all of these 7 live action movies, but Peter Cullen also, like all the other characters, unfortunately, were given to us in little drips and drops. These robots didn't have many lines. They didn't carry the movie. It was always the human characters being what we saw on the screen majority of the time and who was being talked to and hearing. I think maybe the company that was probably doing the voice casting and everything were probably going like, look, we're going to have to listen to Peter Cullen now for the entire duration of the film. Do we listen to Peter Cullen the whole time, or do we listen to Chris Hemsworth the whole time? I think that was probably in their mind also, is, we could get away with Peter Cullen and Frank Welker and stuff like that in the live action movies because we only hear them in little bits and pieces and they could just hit those lines. Where when we're talking a full recording session with Peter Cullen now for a 2-hour movie, it might be a different story. That's just my take too. It's not confirmed, but that's how I could see it. The last thing I want to cover is pretty much what the goals are going to be for this movie. And the first thing is introducing Transformers to the mainstream audience. Because the reality is, and I talked about this before, they might have seen 7 live action movies, but they don't know these characters. They know Shia LaBeouf's character. They know, Cade Yeager, Marky Mark's character. They know, Steinfeld, or whatever her name was in the Bumblebee movie. That shows how forgettable the humans are to me in a lot of ways. These characters, they know them better than they know the robots. The robots are not characters in those live action movies. They're movie props. They're CG models that barely get any screen time when they are talking, or they're toys to people. They aren't really characters. They're one-dimensional, one-line characters. Ironhide likes guns, but we don't know those characters deeper because we don't spend a lot of time with them. We spend more time with Shia LaBeouf's characters and everything like that. We know more about Sam and his antics than we know about anything else. Use this movie as a foundation to make more movies, and what I mean by that is I think it dawned on them that, doing a CG movie is way less expensive than doing a live action movie. The complexity of editing and CG and direction and filming and everything is way more complicated and expensive for live action than it is CG. To just give an example, Rise of the Beast that's coming up soon cost over $200 million in production, filming and everything. And they filmed in Canada, a lot of it. So it was actually cheaper to film in Canada than in the United States, but they filmed right here in Montreal. That's why you guys got all those exclusives from me and stuff, because I was on the set for a lot of it. But, it's something where it's expensive to film live action, where, to give a recent example here, the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is making tons of money, only costs $100 million to make, barely $100 million to make. So it's a lot cheaper. The road is cheaper. The risk is cheaper. And as a result, you could tell the same story pretty much, and not to mention a story that probably a lot of us hardcore fans rather have, and the risk is cheaper. Yeah, maybe the yield of money might not be as much, because we already saw through something like Into the Spider-Verse that live action Spider-Man movies do well, animated Spider-Man movies don't do as well, and they exist in the same timeline in terms of they exist on the theater screens at the same time as the other ones. So clearly you lose an audience when you go full CG, because it's seen as a cartoon, as opposed to a live action where it's an action movie that you might get audiences that normally wouldn't watch cartoons. And I would agree with that. But when you also have $100 million less to worry about, you have more wiggle room. So it costs less. Yeah, you might get less, but it costs less. So it might work out in the end. And the last goal is, Hollywood, again, COVID scared Hollywood. COVID scared Hollywood and pretty much told them, like, look, you could do a CG movie and it's a lot easier to do than doing live action. And while I don't expect something like the pandemic situation to happen again, and end up in that world that we were living in 2020 and early 2021, but we're still kind of living in the aftermath of that. And I'm pretty sure studios are wary of that. And they saw that doing a CG movie, a CG animated movie, is just so much easier production-wise than it is of a live action movie, even though we're kind of a little bit out of the pandemic anyways. We're in a post-COVID world, but the aftermath, the bones of it still exist. And I'm pretty sure they're going, you know what, it's easier to do these, and that's it. And that's a goal for them also. So it's something where we'll see what happens with this, but I like what I'm seeing thus far. We have these images that they posted here, and it's like, oh, hey, we could, here's this one shot of Cybertron. We got this one shot of Cybertron, and it's like, it's got these characters that are looking over this golden age of Cybertron before the war broke out, society and everything. And I mean, we could look at it and it's like, okay, that looks like on the left there is a Megatron character. To the right of him is probably like pre-Optimus Prime Orion Pax. Then you got Elita 1 clearly, and then you got Bumblebee there. So it's clear that they're trying to tell a story from before the war, how the war broke out. I mean, the presence of characters like Sentinel Prime and Orion and Alpha Trion really say a pre-war kind of story. And I'm very curious to see what they do. I'm very curious. It's something that it might be a movie that doesn't do well, but it's going to be a movie that Transformer fans will enjoy. That's what I believe is probably going to happen more than anything. And I rather a movie that doesn't do well, but at least I enjoy it, than the other way around. I don't want, like, the last thing I need is 7 Michael Bay movies that make zillions of dollars, but they're not really good movies. Where I rather have something that's a cult classic. Look at the Transformers 86 movie. We celebrate that all the time. It didn't make a lot of money. It made a lot of money in the long run when it came to VHS sales and DVDs. Then it made more money than it ever hoped to make. But the point is, I just hope it's a really good movie and it tells a really good story. And if people show up, that's all the better. It could continue this. I mean, success then leads to more. But let's just hope that it does well. Let me know what you think, people. That's the thing. The community here, the Transformer community, let me know what you think. Again, I understand the choices of voice actors. I get what they're trying to do here. It's not, look, if I had it my way, and you told me we're doing a young Optimus Prime, maybe Peter Cullen could come in later. We need someone younger. Chris Hemsworth is a name. I get it. Sure. I'm not someone that's going to run out and just take the G1 cast and, put Dan Gilbison back as Bumblebee again, when you could probably use a name that could bring people in, get the mainstream audience who are very stubborn and ignorant, and get them in here to go see a movie, maybe fall in love with these characters, maybe love what they see, maybe want to go out and buy some Transformer products, some statues, some figures, some comic books, whatever, video games. It's a brand, it's a franchise, and at the end of the day, the goal is to move product, to sell toys, to license out material, and let's just hope through all of that, we get a good story. Let me know what you think, people, and thanks again for listening to the Transformer Slag podcast, and I'll talk to you again real soon.